Take a trip back to the 80s. A time of shoulder pads, Walkmans, and neon everything. My name's Robert, and I was a young man with big dreams, living in a quiet American suburb. In Minnesota, I married my college sweetheart, Karen, and we were over the moon when she told me she was pregnant just a year later. I worked as a delivery driver, taking every shift I could to provide for my growing family. When our son, Michael, was born in 1984, I thought my life was complete. Karen was the perfect wife and mother, or so I believed. I trusted her with my whole heart, never imagining that the foundation of our family was built on a lie that would shatter everything. Over the years, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. Michael didn't look much like me. He had bright green eyes, while both Karen and I had brown. People would joke, "Oh, he must take after a distant relative." And I'd laugh it off. But deep down, it nagged at me. Karen also had a habit of disappearing for hours, saying she was visiting her sister or running errands. I never questioned her. I thought that's what a supportive husband does. But in 1989, I found something that turned my world upside down. I was cleaning out the garage, looking for an old toolbox, when I stumbled across a locked diary hidden inside a box of Karen's things. I pried it open, and what I read broke me. The diary was filled with entries from 1983, the year before Michael was born. One page read, "I can't believe Robert still thinks the baby is his. I've been seeing James for months. He's the father. But Robert can never know. He's too good, too trusting. I'll just tell him the baby came early." My hands shook as I read those words. Karen, my wife, had lied to me about our son. Michael wasn't mine. She'd been cheating on me with a man named James, and she'd let me raise another man's child, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. Another entry said, "Robert will never leave me. He's too soft, too afraid of being alone. I can keep this secret forever." I felt my stomach turn. She wasn't just betraying me. She was mocking me, using me to play house while she lived a double life. I wanted to confront her right then, to scream and demand answers, but I didn't. I sat there in the garage, the diary still in my hands, as a plan started to form. If Karen thought I was weak, if she thought I'd never find out, then I'd let her believe that. For now, I spent the next few months gathering evidence. I tracked down James, a co-worker of Karen's from the 80s, and confirmed he'd been with her during that time. I even got a DNA test. Michael wasn't mine. I met with a lawyer to prepare for divorce and made sure all our joint assets were secured in my name. Karen had no idea what was coming. She thought she'd won, that she could keep lying to me forever. But I was about to turn the tables in a way she'd never forget. Fast forward to 2025. Our extended family decided to throw a big reunion to celebrate our roots. A gathering of cousins, aunts, uncles, and friends, all coming together in our hometown. Karen was thrilled, dressing up in her favorite 80s-inspired outfit, ready to play the perfect wife and mother in front of everyone. I waited for the right moment. The reunion was in full swing, with laughter and music filling the air. When I asked to make a speech, I stood up, holding a microphone, and said, "I want to thank my beautiful wife, Karen, for 42 years of marriage, and for teaching me what true betrayal looks like." The crowd went quiet, and Karen's smile faltered. I held up the diary, its pages marked with her own handwriting, and read her words aloud. "I can't believe Robert still thinks the baby is his. I've been seeing James for months. He's the father." While gasps echoed through the crowd. Karen's face turned pale, and she stammered, "That's not true." But I wasn't done. I showed the DNA test results on a projector screen, proving Michael wasn't mine, and played a recorded conversation I'd had with James, where he admitted to the affair. Then I dropped the final blow. "I filed for divorce last week. Karen, and all the money you thought we shared, it's already in a trust for Michael." The family stared at her in shock. Karen tried to run, but there was nowhere to hide. Not from the truth, not from the humiliation. Karen lost everything that day. Her reputation, her marriage, and the perfect image she'd worked so hard to maintain. I walked away, finally free from the woman who'd lied to me for decades. Michael and I still have a bond. I'll always be his dad, no matter what the DNA says. But Karen, she's on her own now, facing the consequences of her own deception. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a fight. It's exposing the truth and letting them fall. What about you? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this cheating wife story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more drama and revenge. The days that followed were a game of patience. I moved through them carefully, pretending nothing had changed, letting them believe I was still their dependable source of support. Every time they called, every time they texted, I responded with the same cheerful indifference, the same tone of compliance that they had come to expect from me over the years. But inside, I was steeling myself for the moment when I would pull the rug out from under them, the moment when they would realize they had no more control over me. I knew how this worked. They'd get desperate. They'd beg. They'd plead. They'd try every trick they had to make me feel guilty enough to give in. They'd try the sweet tone, the guilt trips, the family first act. But I was no longer falling for it. I had already made up my mind, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me again. This time, they'd face the consequences of their actions. It wasn't hard to see through the facade. I had always been the one picking up the slack for their poor financial choices. Every month, I was the one bailing them out, while they lived beyond their means, buying new clothes, taking vacations, eating out at expensive restaurants. And me, I had been left to pick up the tab, silently enduring the burden of their choices, of their entitlement. But now, they had no idea that I had seen through their charade. I had been playing along for years, but this time, it was different. I watched them, analyzed their every move. They didn't know it, but I was already in control. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. They thought I was weak, predictable. But what they didn't realize was that I had been planning my exit for months. The weekend arrived quickly, and I made my way to Mom's house, the house that I had been paying for all this time. I pulled into the driveway, my chest tight with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. This was it. The moment when everything would start to change. I walked inside without knocking. I wasn't the daughter they could count on anymore. I wasn't the one who would drop everything to help them out when they called. I was different now. The familiar smell of expensive candles and takeout filled the air. Mom was sitting on the couch, wrapped in one of her overpriced blankets, sipping tea, as if she were preparing for a serious discussion. Emma was sprawled across from her, lazily scrolling through her phone, and Jake was sitting at the kitchen counter, munching on something that looked suspiciously expensive for someone who couldn't afford to pay rent. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to find out what it was like to live without me, to live without the constant safety net I had been providing. "Hey, sweetheart," Mom said, looking up at me with that familiar warm smile, the one that used to make me feel safe. "We were just talking about you." I smiled back, pretending to be clueless. "Oh yeah, what about?" Mom sighed dramatically, setting her tea down. "Well, you know how much we appreciate everything you've been doing for us. You've been such a blessing, helping out with the rent and all." I bit back the urge to laugh. She was playing the same tired card, the one she always used before making her demands. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. Emma chimed in, her tone casual, like she wasn't talking about money at all. "Yeah, we were actually just talking about how much the rent's going up lately. It's crazy." Jake groaned from the kitchen. "Insane. I don't even know how people are affording it these days." Mom nodded, her eyes wide with exaggerated concern. "Well, we wanted to talk to you about that. The landlord is raising the rent again. It's really bad this time." I tilted my head, pretending to think it over. "Wow, by how much?" Mom hesitated, clearly trying to figure out how much to ask for. "A few hundred more a month." Emma immediately jumped in, trying to downplay it. "It's not that bad. But with all the bills, it's just so much, you know. We're barely keeping up." Jake sighed. "We hate to ask, but there it is. The ask. The moment they thought I would fold. The moment they thought I would say, 'Of course, I'll help.'" I leaned back, pretending to think it over. I could see the desperation in their eyes. They were already laying the groundwork for their next demand. They had no idea that I wasn't going to give them a dime. Mom leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Sweetheart, we wouldn't ask if we weren't really struggling." Emma sighed dramatically, playing her part. "Like, I've had to cut back on so many things." Cut back. I had just seen her post about buying a new designer bag a few days ago. I could barely keep the amusement off my face. They were laying it on so thick. Jake played the role of the stressed-out brother. his voice laced with false gratitude. We're just lucky to have you. You know, not everyone has a sibling who cares this much. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream at them. But instead, I kept my face neutral, playing the part of the dutiful daughter, the one they could always rely on. Mom reached out, placing her hand on mine. Her voice softened, and for a moment, I almost believed she cared. Sweetheart, can you cover the increase? Just until we figure things out. I let the silence stretch. The weight of their expectations hung in the air. I met my mother's gaze, keeping my expression calm. Composed, of course, I said with a smile. Her face lit up with relief. Oh my God, you're the best, she said, practically gasping with gratitude. Emma sighed with relief, a smile tugging at her lips. You're the best, Liv. Jake clapped me on the shoulder. Knew we could count on you. Inside, I was seething. They thought they had me. They thought I would keep paying their bills. Keep playing the role of the obedient, self-sacrificing daughter. But they had no idea what I had planned. I smiled, nodding along, pretending to be their doting sister. But deep down, I was already calculating my next move. They had no idea that the next rent payment wouldn't come from me. Not this time. The days following that conversation felt like a long, slow march toward the inevitable. Every message, every phone call, every text from my family felt like they were tightening the noose around my neck. I kept up the facade, answering their messages with a smile and a laugh, pretending nothing had changed. But inside, I was growing colder, more determined. The game they thought they were playing had already been won, and they didn't even know it yet. It was all just a matter of time. They thought they could keep manipulating me, keep pulling me back into their toxic, entitled world. But the truth was, they had no idea that I was already preparing to cut them off completely. They still thought I was weak, that I couldn't say no, that I would always be their safety net, their ATM. But the truth was, I wasn't their ATM anymore. I wasn't the daughter they could rely on to bail them out every time they made a bad financial decision. The time to act came faster than I expected. The rent was due in just a few weeks, and I knew that this time they wouldn't be getting a single cent from me. I had already made up my mind. I was done. The phone calls started coming in again, each one more desperate than the last. It was as if they knew something had changed, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. They knew I hadn't responded to their messages, but they thought I was just busy. They thought I would still come through when they needed me. I ignored the first few calls. Then my sister, Emma, sent me a text. It was simple, but I could feel the desperation in it. Can you please talk? We really need to sort this out. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. A few hours later, I got a call from my mom. The voice that had once sounded so warm and loving now felt hollow, like a plea wrapped in desperation. Sweetheart, we're in a bit of a jam, she began, her voice tight with anxiety. You know how we were talking about the rent increase? Well, the landlord is being really unreasonable. He's insisting on the full increase. And we're really struggling here. I knew exactly where this was going. They needed me. They always needed me. But this time, I wasn't going to give in. I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Neutral. What do you want me to do about it? There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear my mom's voice waver, like she was trying to figure out how to play this. Well, we're just asking for a little bit of help, just to get us over the hump this month. And then we'll figure things out. The audacity. They really thought I would just roll over and give them the money again. They thought I would keep bailing them out. No questions asked. I swallowed the anger rising in my chest and let the silence hang between us. I think you're more than capable of handling this on your own, I said, my voice steady, but the coldness in it made the words feel like a slap in the face. My mom was silent for a moment, like she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. Sweetheart, you know, I can't just let you guys get evicted, right? I let out a slow, controlled breath, trying to keep my calm. You've had money for vacations, new furniture, trips to restaurants. You've been living beyond your means for years. And now you want me to save you again. The only reason you're in this mess is because of your spending habits. I'm not going to bail you out anymore. Her voice cracked, the sweet facade she had always used to manipulate me beginning to crumble. You owe us, sweetheart. We've always been there for you, haven't we? I let that one hang in the air, letting her words echo in the silence. Yeah, I said, my voice cold. You've been there when it was convenient for you. But now I'm done. I'm done being your ATM. I'm done being the one who picks up the pieces every time you screw up. It's time to figure things out on your own. There was a long, painful silence on the other end of the line. My mom's voice wavered as she tried to find the right words. But I wasn't going to let her off the hook this time. Please, sweetheart, she said, her voice almost pleading now. We can't do this without you. But I was done. No, I said firmly. You can. You just have to learn how to manage your own life without depending on me. I'm not helping you anymore. Good luck. I hung up before she could say anything else. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. It was the first time in years that I had stood my ground. The first time I had said no without feeling guilty, without worrying about the consequences. But the aftermath was just beginning. The phone calls didn't stop. Over the next few days, my phone was bombarded with messages and missed calls. Me mom, my dad, even Emma. Each one trying to convince me to come through for them. Each one desperate for me to be their safety net once more. I turned off my phone's ringer. I didn't need to hear it anymore. I didn't need to listen to their pleas. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to guilt me into helping them, trying to make me feel like I was abandoning them. But I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was finally taking control of my own life, my own finances, and my own happiness. When the rent was due, the calls started again. But this time, I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give them a penny. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their world of manipulation and entitlement. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. A few days later, I got a text from my sister. It was short, but it was enough to tell me everything I needed to know. The rent's due again. I didn't respond. Then my mom sent a message. Can you please just help us this one time? We're really struggling. I didn't respond to that either. I had already made my decision. A few days later, I got a voicemail from my dad. It was brief, but the desperation in his voice was clear. Leave. We really need you. Please, just this one time. But I wasn't listening anymore. I knew what they wanted. They wanted me to save them, but I wasn't their savior. I wasn't their crutch. I wasn't going to be their ATM anymore. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us grew. They didn't reach out to me anymore. Not with the same false sense of entitlement. At least, the calls stopped. The messages stopped. They were forced to face the consequences of their actions. And eventually, they were evicted. I didn't come to their rescue. I didn't bail them out, and I didn't feel bad about it. It wasn't pretty, but it was exactly what they needed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a dramatic showdown. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away, letting them realize they can't rely on you anymore. And that was the lesson they needed to learn, that I was done being their ATM, and they never came back.